Hi, welcome to Round Robin. I'm Celine Guerrero, and with us today we have Greg Siegel of the Hampton Street Car 390 project, and he's going to tell us all about the history of the streetcar, where it is now, and what the plans are for the future of the streetcar. Welcome, Greg.
Well, thanks for having me again. This seems to be a regular thing.
Yes, but there was some exciting news recently.
Definitely.
The streetcar is back in Hampton.
It's back in Hampton. Well, let me give you views a little bit of history of the car.
Yes, because it's been a while, so we want to get a little refresher.
We want to remind them.
Yes, exactly.
Well, our streetcar is number 390, and it was brought to Hampton, purchased for Hampton in 1918.
Wow.
And it ran on about 40 miles of track between the shipyard all the way to Old Point and out to Buckrow. And it ran from 1918 through January of 1946.
Wow.
And that was when all the rest of the streetcars were taken off of the tracks in Hampton, Newport News, and everything was converted to buses. Buses started a lot earlier than that in this area. Buses started in the late 20s and continued to grow throughout into the 40s, and it just got to a point where our streetcar lines were so old, and the money that it would cost to upgrade the track, upgrade the cars, it just wasn't feasible to do that. And so the decision was made to take all the cars off.
And during that time, how many streetcars were running?
Well, between streetcars, work cars, freight cars, there was over 60 pieces of equipment that our streetcar company had. At any one time, there was probably 40 cars running around.
Okay.
By the time we got to the end of January 46, there was only 20 left that were still sort of running around, as they say. The 390, we believe, is the last streetcar that survived that time period. And now, you know, there might be a viewer that has a car in their backyard,
right?
But nobody has come forward, you know, saying that, hey, I have an old streetcar, come take a look at it. But if anybody out there that has one, let us know,
right?
And we'll take a look at it.
Yeah. And so what happened after 1946? It had its own little adventure, though.
That is the best part of the story, because where do you find 100-year-old anything that doesn't have a story behind it? And the 390 has a great story. In January 46, it was taken off the track for the last time. It was sold in the spring of 46 to a couple named John and Mary Anderson, and they lived in York County. And they bought the car for $100, and including that $100 was free transportation and moving that car to York County, and they lived in it. They made it their home. From 46 until Mrs. Anderson, I think, left the car, and we're not sure about the date yet, either December of 76 or January of 77. By then, she was getting up in years, and the only way to heat the car for heating for them was a pot-belly stove.
Wow.
And it was at one end of the car, and the Andersons never had children, so some nieces and nephews that lived in Newport News, apparently that winter was really bad, and when they would call on Miss Anderson to see how her well-being was, the car just wasn't heating up good enough because of how cold the winter was, and they persuaded her to leave the car, and that was the end of that. During that, towards the 76 time period, Miss Anderson sold the property. They owned 14 acres off of Route 17. And people are probably familiar with the True Value hardware store location, and that was their area property. So the owners of the True Value hardware store moved the car up closer to the road, and they used it as a storage space, like a storage shack with bird seed and grass seed and, you know, all those type of things. Now this is where the story gets really cool. In the summer of 77, a gentleman from the Baltimore Streetcar Museum was driving home from a vacation at Virginia Beach. They took 17 home, and while he was on 17, he looked over and saw something that looked like a streetcar. And he stopped, he inquired about it, got some information, took pictures of it, and then when he got back to Baltimore, they were excited about it.
That's how it ended up.
in Baltimore. And then why did Baltimore want it? Now, this is all pretty fascinating story. Because if Baltimore didn't want it, the car, the 390, would end up being trashed and probably sold for scrap metal.
Right.
You know, when the hardware store didn't want to use it anymore. But the Baltimore Streetcar Company and the Hampton Company, Streetcar Company, known each other really well. And the Hampton Company was a very small company. We did not have engineers, and we did not have a lot of the other workings of a large streetcar company here. So when Hampton needed streetcars and wanted to order streetcars, they would piggyback on to a Baltimore order.
Okay.
So the 390 was an exact replica of what Baltimore had running around Baltimore. And Baltimore had like hundreds of cars. And at the time in 1977, Baltimore Streetcar Museum did not have a car like this model that we have here that ran through, as part of their stable of cars. So they wanted it. So they agreed to get it. It sat in the Baltimore Streetcar Museum's barn from winter of '77 all the way through last August.
Wow. And then last August, it did have finally its big homecoming.
It had a big homecoming, and I appreciate Channel 47. They were out there, and they did a great special.
Definitely.
On it. We had hundreds of people out there welcoming it back.
And it was given back to the city.
It was given back to the city at no cost, because Baltimore Streetcar Museum, they wanted the car to go to somebody that would use it as an educational vehicle, I should say, where students, people of all ages could learn about the streetcar industry, what the streetcar meant for a city, and so forth. So we worked with the city of Hampton. We worked with the History Museum and the volunteer committee that I am chair of, and we got it all arranged to get that car down here.
And where is it now?
It's in Fort Monroe. Glenn Oder and his team graciously has lent us part of a building.
Yeah. And it was a tight fit.
It was a tight fit for height. I know you guys have videos somewhere in the archives
we'll probably share that
watching it, how close it was to the top.
Right.
But we measured it out. We were hoping we didn't have to do too drastic things to it to get it in the door frame. But it was fun watching it, getting in there, and we said, okay, stage one is over.
And now the next phase, which would be to restore this.
To start restoration, right. In November of last year, I guess, November 17, our streetcar restorer is Keith Bray, and I know we've talked to them to talk about him in previous episodes, and he did a car survey for us. And through that car survey, we have a good idea of what needs to get done. And I brought my little model along here, and I think this might be good to explain a little bit of what we're doing. This is our full streetcar. This is a little cardboard version of it. So on a streetcar, we have different parts of it. We have on the two ends of the cars, those are called platforms. You have the body of the car that would be between the two platforms. And then on the bottom here, you have trucks. Okay? So what we have to do is take it all apart and rebuild it. At a 100-year-old relic, that was an outside vehicle, you have some issues to it.
Yes.
Okay. The other cool thing is that because it was used as a house, everything was stripped out from the inside. Okay. So also the problem we have is that when the car was sold to the Andersons, the trucks, which are, you see the two wheels here, that assembly, you have four wheels in this assembly, four on each side, that's called a truck.
Okay.
Those aren't original trucks. Those trucks were given to us by Baltimore Streetcar Museum to use to help transport the car.
Okay.
Okay. What we have to do is retrofit them to make them look like the trucks that were originally on a 100-year-old car. We kind of went out and said, okay, if we could buy these, how much would a truck cost? And we were given a figure about $150,000 per truck. So we're going to retrofit those. So what we have to do in the first stage of restoration is that we have to raise the car up off the trucks, pull the trucks out, We don't have to, as most people know, there's only one platform on the car right now. The other one was taken off because it had to fit into the Baltimore Museum's little space that they had, so they took off that.
Okay.
That has to come off, and we're going to start restructuring the body of the car.
And what is the total cost of this right now?
Well,
estimated cost of this, and timeline also?
Well, the timeline is simple. More money we raise, the quicker we can get it done.
Right.
Okay, like anything else. The timeline to do what we call the stage 2 of it, to raise the car up, take off the one platform and start restoration on the inside, which is peeling back the metal,
right.
Raising the roof off and start doing the work. That's going to take around 2.5 months to do that work. And then it's going to take probably another 2.5 months to 3 months to finish replacing all the rotten wood in the body of the car. And then we go into the other stages is rebuilding the platforms and reattaching those. But we're thinking the whole restoration of the car itself is probably around $175,000.
Okay. And you are working hard to raise that money. You do have a GoFundMe page right now.
We started a GoFundMe page because people asked me to start one because they said it's easy to raise money. So if you go to GoFundMe and you say, you type in streetcar 390, it should pop up.
And you have a Facebook page.
A Facebook page, we have over 440 followers. We would love to have more because you can donate through that page also, and you can kind of look for updates. On what we're doing. The most successful thing, one of the most successful things we're doing is be engraved in Hampton history brick, which is, this is the order form. I should go back. You can pick this up at the Hampton History Museum, and you can pick it up on Fort Monroe and some other locations around town, and it's real easy to fill out. And then there's a self envelope here that all you do is tear it off and mail it in.
Right.
But our brick has been very successful. We sold about 62 bricks in about 1.5 years.
How much are the bricks?
The bricks are $100 each, and you can be engraved in history. So you can write
and be part of restoring this
and be
big
part
piece
of
history.
this. And people always ask me, well, how many bricks? Is there a limit on number of bricks?
Right.
The location of the streetcar is going to be in front of the History Museum. And that's a very large space.
It is.
So I'm not going to deny anybody that wants to buy a brick to have a brick.
Right.
Because there's always going to be room for one more.
And now tell us about the fundraising events that you have. You do have one every fall, but you might be adding another one in the spring.
Well, last year we had a very successful open house. We did an open house in September. We estimated close to 300 people walk through, take a look at the car, learn about the history, look at some of the artifacts that we have for the car. We're going to repeat that in April.
Okay.
We don't know when that's going to be. We think it'll be in the middle of the month, and once we have a firm date and everybody signs off on it, I'll let you know so that you can post it on the channel. And last year was very successful. We got a lot of people energized about the project because they could actually touch it, feel it, and say.
And it is a really neat car. I mean, when I saw it in August, while yes, it is old and there are pieces missing, but it's fascinating that these cars were running,
correct.
In Hampton, that was a mode of transportation.
And it was like, for some people, it was the only mode of transportation.
Right.
Which is, when I go on the car and I stand inside, and which we'll have it available for folks to come out in April, they could go onto the car and stand in it. You got to put yourself back 100 years.
Yep.
And, you go, wow. And I'm standing here where somebody stood to go to work or to go shopping or go to the movies or go see their aunt and uncle and grandma and grandpa on a Sunday. It's just remarkable. Going back to fundraising, we do every November, we do we call it a Red Wines and Blues. This will just be our 3rd year going. We always do a different twist to it and so forth. So that's usually the 1st or 2nd weekend of November.
Right, and it's been a pretty successful event.
It's been a fun thing.
Yeah.
And the reason why people say, well, why do you do all these events and stuff? We do it to have a good time and to share our story of the streetcar. And more people that know about it, they get excited about it. And that's why we do the open houses. And the open houses will continue to go. And we're looking at, in April, to do a fundraiser attached to the open house. So once I have more information about a fundraiser attached.
You just let us know. And what is your vision for when it's there in front of the History Museum? How will people be able to enjoy this? How will children and families be able to enjoy the streetcar once it's completely restored?
It's completely and done, and you know, people ask me also, you know, when it's going to be done. And if we get it started, we are going to get it started in July, where the first restoration will start in July. Depending about our money raising, we should get it done in about 3.5 years. So we're halfway through the tunnel. We spent 3 years trying to get it here, and it started in 2013. To last August to get it here. So now we're halfway through the tunnel, we see the light to get it done. But
almost there.
With the City Council's blessings, the car is going to be on display in front of the museum, and we are going to be putting together a audio-visual type presentation. So while you're in the car, we will show a short video, probably about 3-4 minutes. We're still trying to figure all that out at the moment. And we're going to take you on a streetcar ride using lights and sound effects and so forth. And take you on a ride of the streetcar through Hampton, down to Buck Road, down to the ferry docks at Old Point, going through some of the neighborhoods and stuff, to try and put you back in the 1930s, 1940 time period, and show people what used to be here. You know, we were called Crab Town, and that was for a reason. And so forth. And you know, with technology changes and so forth and modernization, we don't have that now. But it's always good to preserve the past. And our History Museum is really good at doing that. And the displays, we'll have different displays set up, talking about the history of the streetcar. We are going to talk about taking a lump of coal and turning that into electricity. Because, you know, as right now, most people, you know, much younger than us, you know, all they know is they plug in their iPhone into an outlet and boom, it's charged in 5 seconds. So we're going to talk about energy and how energy was made, and then the history of energy a little bit.
So it'll be a full, well-rounded history lesson of the city and technology, and then just how everything has evolved since then.
Right. And I think that's, you know, that's one thing, you know, that's part of the history of Hampton. Because we have involved, you know, just as much as anybody. We went from, you know, Crab Town, then we went off to NASA, you know, and then we went off to this, you know, and then with, you know, Langley and those guys. And, you know, it's amazing that in such a short period of history time, you know, how much our city has involved. And our 390 is going to be our vehicle to show all that.
Yeah, and that sounds very exciting.
It is.
Now, do you have a website, or people can reach you mostly on?
Only through Facebook.
Facebook,
okay. Which is, you type up in the search area, just put Streetcar 390 and
you do
you'll
pop
find
up
it.
right away. And
good. That's good to know. There's nobody else using the 390 streetcar logo there. But that's the best way of our communication. We do have an email, info@ Streetcar 390. You can go to the History Museum, leave a question for them. Lucy and the staff will get it back to me as chair of the volunteer.
And they're wonderful about giving you information about the streetcar and just getting, you know, people in touch with you and all that. And then you give us the information, and we will have the calendar filled with the event coming up in April.
Yeah,
and then in
I was
November.
hoping before I sat down today, and we're sitting down in the beginning of February, that I would have a lot of the details worked out by now. But we think it's going to take another week to get everything
but
organized.
That's perfectly fine. I mean, once we do have all that information, it'll be out there, and we'll put it out there for everyone.
And if anybody needs a flyer like this, like I said, you go to the museum. This is really the order form we need to keep track of people that donating with us. And it's a great project to get involved in.
Oh, yes, definitely. It's exciting. Well, thank you so much, Greg, for
having me.
Going over all the history and then the exciting future of the streetcar.
Well, hopefully you'll have me back in the fall.
Oh, yes, we will.
I can tell you about the restoration so far, or having you come out to Fort Monroe.
That would be great.
Then we could do a live event.
That would be great. Thanks so much, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. And remember to look up Streetcar 390 on Facebook to get updates and to donate for this great cause. Thanks for watching.